Jack Smith. Been a master gardener almost 20 years. And did this presentation, I think I did this about 15 years ago. So it's still current, still active, and will still work. Let's see if I can get this thing to go. September doesn't mean that we're through fall gardening. Have a good fresh vegetables from now, actually, until next March. Until next March, past freeze, past whatever. The Master Gardener program had a small garden plot of spinach a few years ago. They it was 20 by 20, something like that. It was small, and they planted it in around the 1st of September. It went through September. It went through December, January, February, and March. Went through all of the summer and started again in the fall.
And they didn't cover it or anything?
Nope, they didn't do anything with it. In the summertime, when it got hot on it, they did die back. But then again, when it started getting cool weather, they reverberated and came back and produced again and did well. They had to pull them all up finally after I've been there about a year. So anyway, it's not too late to start. 1st of September, about 10 or 12 years ago, I said, I wonder if I can grow green beans. So I planted some bush beans. I didn't want climbers or whatever, and it was going to be close to frost time, so I planted them in the container. They came up, did well. My wife and I ate green beans 3 meals a week for 6 weeks. Finally, the frost got to them around the middle of October, so it works. They came up and they were active, beginning to bloom in about 3 weeks. So these were bush beans, and they're a little different than the climbers. So, but anyway, they worked well. And for a container, they were great because you didn't have to put poles up for them to climb on. I've grown tomatoes that weigh a pound apiece in the containers. So, you know, it's a great program if you go into it. So if you ever hear of Earthbox, I suggest you maybe get one or find someone who can copy it and make one out of Walmart has these little 10-gallon storage containers, or you can put clothes in and whatever. That's what I make them out of. Buy them for $6. I do a little bit of work on it. I cut the top out and work on it and drill some holes and whatever, so it works great. And that's what I did the green beans on, so it does work. Anyway, doesn't automatically mean gardening is over. You can start outside, you can start whatever. Gardening, a good way to have fresh vegetables right into the winter. I told you about the spinach that we had. Fall gardening, not just a way to keep the summer, but you can produce vegetables for the summer and winter. First thing you do is have a plan. Do, by all means, have a plan, what you're going to do, and if you're going to put it in your yard, where you're going to put it, how you're going to maintain it, what you're going to put in it, and how to take care of it. Have a plan and yard where you're going to use your yard or your garden. Identify your plan and major structures, particularly if you're going to do an in-ground, where your structures are. I like the containers because I can move them around. If it's going to be a kind of a frosty time, and I can move it up closer to the house where it's a little bit warmer than out next to the fence, where plants will receive the most sunlight in winter days. How big, how many containers you're going to have. At one time I was running about 8 or 10 containers, and I was growing lettuce, I was growing beans, tomatoes, squash, cucumbers, all types of things in containers, believe it or not. Plan a sketch where you're going to put your garden if you're actually going to put it in the ground. Containers can be moved during the growing season. Just told you about that, so it works. Soil prep. Remove all, if you're going to do it in the garden or in your yard, remove all your dead plants, unproductive, burned, infested material. That's the main thing. If you're going to have something that has been there before, if you've had green beans or something of that nature, had problems with insects, burn it. Don't put it in your compost pile, because what you're going to do, you're putting it into an incubator. They're going to grow again. They're going to come back again. So get rid of them, burn them, put it in your trash on a curb or someplace like that, and not burn it. Add compost if you're having a fall garden. It's a good time to have a good soil test. If you're going to be doing raised beds or in the ground, get a soil test at least every 3 years, because you don't know how much whatever the nutrients in the soil you have used up, what needs to be replaced, and how to replace it. You can do if it's a soil test you're going to do in your yard, extension office. Have a question, go to the extension office. You know where the farmer's market is, the extension office is over there in that same vicinity. Talk to those people. They will give you a box, and you can put some soil samples in it, take it back to them with some money. They will send it to Nashville to one of their laboratories. They will give you a written report as to what you need to do, when you need to do it, and how it should be done. If you're not going to do that, you can do it your own. You can put the box, put it in the mail, and send it to them. They'll still return it to you. If you're not having a fall garden, it's a good time to have the soil test and whatever amendments you're going to have. You may want to replace the soil in your containers. I have done that about every 3 to 4 years if you're going to do that. Just kind of maintain and depend on, I don't try to put the same thing back in the same container every year. That way, because tomatoes suck nutrients out of the soil differently than green beans do. So swap your plants around, and if you're doing it in containers. Be good, would not, if not, it would be good to remove the soil from the container, mix it up with some other container soil, and use it in something like flowers or something like that, that you can reuse that soil. If not, just spread it out over your yard. There's not that much in it. You know, a little container that's about that long and that wide, it's not going to have an awful lot of. So if you want to get rid of it, just take it and just spread it over your yard, and it'll be fine. Plant a fall garden the same time you plant a spring and summer garden. But why? It's difficult sometimes to find seed that you want to use in the fall. They flood the market in the spring with seed packs. So you may not be able to find what you want to plant if you're planting something in September or October. So get your seeds in the spring. They're going to be fine. They'll be fine till next year even, probably. But then they start going downhill. You won't get the same amount of growth out of the seed. It'll drop down maybe 10, 15% per year. Helps to have the seeds so you can plant at the appropriate time. Cool weather crops start in the fall, right up to the first frost and beyond then. Fall planting is great because cooler temperatures in the sun. You know, you don't have to get out and get quite as hot as it is if you're in July. But August is a little bit warm. Not this year. We've been cool. We've been wet. My son is in Jackson, Mississippi. They haven't had rain in 30 days. Temperature yesterday was 102. Wasn't that here? We had rain yesterday. It was in the upper 70s and low 80s. And he's struggling. Spring varieties are not always the best fall varieties. So look at what you're going to be planting and see if it's good for spring or fall. Same thing if you're wanting to do flowers, does the same thing. Although fall gardening requires a bit more attention to detail, it pays off in the late season because I told you about the spinach. There are other products that do the same thing. I grew up on a farm. My dad in July would go out and wherever the corn was growing or whatever was growing at that time, he would go out and spread turnip seed. Turnips, they go out, he didn't do anything to them, he just spread the seed. And he tried to do it a little bit maybe before he was planning on having a rain. That way, you know, the rain will wash it in. We'd have turnips and we'd have turnip greens up until, good Lord, the middle of the winter. So it wasn't at all. Bit more attention, okay. Cool autumn temperatures make a delight. It's a lot better to spend it in being outside when it's cool than it is when it's in the hot summertime. Fall gardens considered more difficult to grow than spring gardens? Yes, a little bit because of the heat, the early heat. But then when it does get cool, it's about the same. Include possible drought? Yes, not this year. This has been an unusual year for this part of the world and other parts. Planting seed for your fall garden, keep in mind the conditions are different than when you're planting for summer gardens, because you're starting out hot, going to cool instead of planting cool and going to hot. So things do work different. Trying to plant lettuce, forget it. Lettuce seed will not plant if the temperature is above 60 degrees. They will lay there, they will rot. If it's below 60 degrees, you can plant lettuce in February. It comes up, it does well. But not if you plant it in August. It's going to lay there and say, it's too hot, I ain't about to get up there and do that. So be careful and watch what you're planting, when you're planting. So be careful. Hot, dry weather in August, September is hard. Just got through talking about it. Plant seeds in moist soil, cover with moist and non-crusting materials. Yes. Take some soil that's a little bit damp, not wet, just a little damp. Take it and sprinkle it with your hands, sprinkle it over. Cover the seed about twice as deep as you do in the spring to kind of keep the seed a little cooler by having them a little bit deeper. Thin organic mulch helps retain moisture, keeps the soil warm, and helps germination. 3 to 5 seeded, small seeded vegetables like broccoli and cabbage. Seedlings are established, thin them. Do not pull the plants out. Why? Because if it's next to another plant, you may disturb the root system of that plant that you want to save. Go in and just take a little pair of garden scissors or a knife or something and cut them off rather than pulling them out. Are you going to save the plants? No. You're going to take them, toss them, just cut them off, throw them away, put them in your compost, throw them in the road, or whatever you want to do with them. Latest possible planting date, Murfreesboro first frost is around the 15th of October. I have seen it a little bit earlier. I have seen it a lot later. I have seen one time the first frost was Thanksgiving. Weird, a month after October the 15th. Days for the plant to mature after planting, roughly 50 days. That's an average. Some are a lot shorter than that, some are a little longer. Add 10 days equals 60 days, October the 15th minus 60. So now is about the time you need to start planting some of these seed. You may need, not this year, but you may need to kind of shade them in order to keep it a little bit cooler. Don't panic upon the arrival of frost or light freezes, because a lot of these plants that you're planting for fall usually are done in the spring, so they are used to being frosted on or being a little cool. Don't panic. Mild weather will follow then in September, October, and of course in November. So seed packs. A lot of people I know who use seed packs and plant lettuce and radishes and cucumbers and whatever. They'll take and plant those seed and toss the seed pack. Don't. Because there is so much information on the back of this thing It's like an encyclopedia. It will tell you a lot of things. What water, sunlight, how deep, days to maturity. Say, how long is it going to be till these beans plant produce? No. How long is it going to be till my lettuce produces? It's on the seed pack. Don't throw it away. Throw it away at the end of the gardening season and whatever. Soil temps, high power, and other comments that they may have. Environmental conditions can add sugar to sweet corn, crispness to carrots and parsnips. Temperatures do that. If you start by September the 1st, be able to harvest green beans, cucumber, and zucchini before freeze. If you do it now, again, when is our first freeze, our first frost? The middle of October or later. If it's later, hey, you got an extra 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, you know, who knows. Seeds of lettuce and spinach will not germinate if the temperature exceeds 85. That's wrong. 70. Change that. Spinach can be overwintered, reach a good size by the first frost. I told you about the spinach we had at the extension service. It went for a year, year and a half. So, and it was the summertime. It wasn't that good, wasn't that edible. But then in the fall, when it started producing again, it started putting out new growth. That new growth was good. Onions and other bulb vegetables such as garlic, good choice for late summer, early fall, spring planting because they like cold weather. They will do well in cold weather. Fall varieties have just the opposite of spring growing conditions, long dry days, first and short cool moist days as they mature. Killing frost is inevitable harvest of most tender vegetables that you're going to have. If your spot's low and unsheltered, it could be a frost pocket. I have seen a high spot where there is no frost. Down in a low spot, there would be frost. It's a little bit unusual, but you can see that. Root crops such as carrots and radishes should be harvested or mulched heavily before a hard freeze. A light freeze, they will do fine, no problem. Harvest of mulched root crops can be extended well into the wintertime. I'll tell you that my dad planted turnips. We had turnips in January and February. So, okay, containers, you can use all kinds of containers. This is, you can see those big pots, ceramic pots, they're great. Or you can use half barrels. You can go to Jack Daniels. Well, I don't know if you can now or not, but it used to. You could go down there and buy a barrel for $15. You can't do it anymore. I think they're around $50 or $75 now. But you can go ahead and use those. Elevated. This is good for people who are elderly and who maybe are in wheelchairs or have problems like me now, getting up and down. This is the earth box I was telling you about. And you can see this one, they got wheels on it. I didn't have wheels on mine. Following vegetables are selected because they're said to be good for a regular garden as well as containers and are excellent vegetables for fall and winter gardening. Butterhead lettuce. You can grow head lettuce, you can grow leaf lettuce, you can grow whatever kind of lettuce you like to. You can read that. You've got a copy of that. You can read that as well as I can. So I'm not going to read it all there for you. Bottom is collards. You know, I've never eaten collards. A lot of people have. I don't know. It's one of the plants that is common to southern gardeners. It wasn't in my family for some reason. Turnip greens, yes. But collards, nah, I don't know. They might be great. Mustard. I don't know if you've ever eaten mustard or not. Mustard greens. They're great. If you haven't, you try them. You can do them in containers. You can do them in your garden. Kale. It's a fall crop. It kind of likes frost. It can be used also as an ornamental plant. You can put it in your flower garden. Give it some green, and it's also edible. So salad, you know, whatever lettuce the small leaf lettuce that you'd like to. Little Jim head lettuce, they're good. It grows at around 50 days. It's got them a head grown. So if you start it now, by the end of let's see, September, October, by middle of October, it will have a head. Beets, we had beets all the time. We have cooked them, and my mother used to cook them, and we'd have them hot. She'd also take them, she'd pickle them, and we'd have them in the wintertime. Spinach, well, we've already talked about spinach, so we don't have to talk about spinach that much anymore. Squash, now this is Balmoral hybrid squash. We always use the yellow crookneck squash and those type, but can be grown in the containers as well. Swiss chard, I don't know anything about Swiss chard. It's something that can be grown. It's a sweet leaves. I don't know if I would like it or not, but this is something I just found. I threw it in there. Cabbage, oh yes. And it will grow in the wintertime. And you can see here that it has snow on these. So it grows in the wintertime. If it gets started in the fall, and it will stay out and stay fresh. Carrots, the same. They grow well. Successful succession in containers. You can grow any kind from the babies that are only about so long to those that are like this, and you can do them in containers or in your garden. Turnips, well, we've already talked about turnips. Onions, we used to grow onions in the garden. And when they were young, we'd pull them up and have them as a little fresh string along, leave them in the ground, and they will continue and they'll grow the bulb. So it's your choice what you'd like to do. Pak choy, this is a Chinese cabbage. I don't know anything about it. It is something that some people, I've seen it in a grocery store occasionally. I've never used it, so if you have, it's something you can do. Mustard greens, yes. Mustard, turnip greens basically are awfully similar, and you can grow them containers or in your garden. Brussels sprouts, they're kind of like miniature cabbage, except they don't grow like cabbage. They grow on a stem. No, back. They grow on a stem, and you kind of pick them off. Little cabbage heads. Cauliflower, I like cauliflower. I've never grown it, but again, if you'd like to experiment with it and work with it, it's something you can again grow in your garden or in a container. Spring to autumn, this works out well over winter in a container or in your garden. Garlic. Garlic is a lot like onions. I've never grown garlic, but it's basically you can do the same thing and put some garlic cloves, stick them in the ground, they'll start to grow. You can grow your own garden. Leeks are basically a variety of an onion that came in mainly from, I think, Germany is where they came in from, up in the Mideast. And finally, how about a walking stick cabbage? I've never seen one, but I thought this thing was unreal. It can be used as a walking stick. Plants may reach 2.1 meters in height. So plants from early spring will grow up to 3 feet, 10 feet in the second year, make a good stick. This is a hardy plant hardiness map. It will give you an idea of what and when frost will appear in this part of the country. I'm sure, I don't know if you really know it or not, but we are in the geographic center of the state of Tennessee. There's a little monument out past the university where it's out there, and they've got this monument out there, and we're the exact center of the state. So if you can find the exact center there, I don't think they've got the towns listed, but generally we're it will show you where and when. Here's Tennessee. Kind of gives you an idea of, again, the hardiness and how much moisture I think maybe we get. Where did I get this information? All these. A little bit of information from this one and a little bit from that one. I'm associated with the University of Tennessee through the Master Gardener program and have been for working on my 20th year. And any questions? I appreciate you being here. I appreciate all your questions, and I hope I've given you some actual answers and been helpful to some degree. Thank you a lot.